How are you doing?
Really good. Really good. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you. I think last time I spoke to you was one of your Harlan Coben extravaganzas. Although I will say, I don't know if you've seen, but on the new Hey You Guys like showreel thing, you are the first person to pop up. You go, Hey You Guys from the Goonies.
Amazing.
Anyway, congratulations on this film.
Thank you.
It's one of those films that, as with all sort of war stories, there's so much that we just don't know, all these little stories in amongst all kind of the bigger stories that
Yeah.
happen. It was it sounds like such a silly question, but did this feel like a bit of a history lesson for you? Because there's so much that happened during that time that we, because of history and how records are kept and people's stories, all that kind of stuff, that we just don't know. And this one just felt like, wow, this is a story that it's just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose there is an early delve into history. I mean, I did sort of look at the map of where Jasko's farm was, and it was once in Poland, and then it was in Ukraine for a while. So that border has shifted, which I think to me felt very current, very relevant. The idea of a sort of a refugee. I mean, it's hard to describe a Holocaust survivor as a refugee, but he was fleeing and hiding across the border. So there's that aspect of it. But as you say, there's something very domestic about this. The details of Max's survival, which was very much documented in Maxwell Smart's autobiography. So the source material was from the person who is still alive, and I read his book and thought, I don't need any more than this. I just need his words, and then of course Rebecca made the most incredible documentary called Cheating Hitler, where they made some extraordinary discoveries of the people that had crossed his path during this tale, and but the one person they couldn't find was Jasko, my farm.
That's I mean it's when I was watching it last night, I thought to myself, God, this is this boy just in this because we've there's so many stories, but this boy and his story and his kind of the kind of willpower and the just the self-belief of him as a kid. I mean, he's such a young kid, and for like the situation around him is so extraordinary, and he's displaced and all that kind of stuff. And then to see him do the other stuff. I mean, it's just the most extraordinary story. I mean, when you read the script and heard of that, I mean, it's kind of doesn't feel real in some respects. But again, there were so many children like him, I guess, at that time.
Yeah, and what he did with the rest of his life is quite extraordinary. I feel like he brushed past every single profession there was, and then has become this extraordinary artist. And he's 94 now, and he still paints every day. I mean, he's become a very successful person and very upbeat, very sort of energetic. And you just think that he took life by the horns and just made the most of it after that experience. One of the things that's quite difficult for the film to portray is the fact that he spent nearly a year in the wilderness as this young boy, surviving on berries and sort of catching rabbits, here and there, and fish from the river. But you know, almost incomprehensible of how did he live for an entire year in a hole in the ground. Yeah, I can't imagine it. At one point in the early prep, I said to Rebecca, "Oh, I might just live in Jasko's cottage for the duration of the shoot because I was only on it for 2.5 weeks." And then I got there and went, "No, where's the hotel?" Because it was sort of like there were mice and there was no heating, and then it's a bit kind of smelly, and then afterwards you think, but that's because we live very comfortable lives.
Mm. How was it filming this one? Because as I say, some because your role, you're obviously not the main character in this, but your character has such an impact on the story in terms of like shooting it. Because you're obviously it looks as real as it could possibly get, and all of these things. How did Rebecca kind of describe what she wanted to kind of accomplish with the film and how she wanted to shoot it? Because it feels like coming from a documentary background, it does have that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised that we were shooting in Canada for Poland, but they'd done some incredible work researching the ancient trees and the types of trees, and obviously the forest is almost a character in itself. And then the location production designer just found this amazing cottage that the minute I walked on set, I was like, that's exactly how I imagined it. And the proximity to the woods and the sort of journeys they go on. It was very contained, but it felt real to me. It felt like this little isolated village, or it's not even a village, a farm with a neighbor. And of course, it's at a time where communication was very different to how it is now. So, but yeah, I think you're right about Rebecca's documentary background, because her directing and shooting style was very much about leaving things alone and capturing something without manipulating it too much, which I just thought was really interesting. And she was just only ever interested in truth. There was no sense of make this more dramatic, or, it was real.
Let me ask you about Jett, I believe his name is, who
Yeah.
plays Maxwell. I mean, over the years, there's been so many amazing kind of young teen performances, and there's been a few over the last couple of years. But the weight of this part is so extraordinary. Yet this young guy, I mean, he's incredible in this film, and as I say, there's so much weight to carry. How impressed were you in terms of his performance?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for him to be so competent at carrying the film when I read it, and I saw some photographs of him, and I was like, gosh, his face is amazing. And then I arrived, and they'd already been shooting for a couple of weeks, and he did walk on set as the leading man, and I just thought this little kid. I mean, obviously, with a name like Jett Klyne, I mean, you're going to get a bit of respect, and sunglasses come down, and it's like Jett Klyne's on. But no, he was lovely, and there was sort of he was incredibly prepared, actually, technically brilliant, which I always am surprised at. But I don't think it has been trained into him. It's just a natural instinct. What I really loved about working with him and with young people in general is that there's always this ability to sort of break them out of what they think is going to happen. So throwing little surprises at him, and I would see his face light up. And then when I think he understood that there was a sort of game going on between us, I think he was up for it. And then of course you've got so what you do is you've built trust, so that when there's this scene at the end where his little friend dies, he would be in a very emotional state, but I'm there with him, and he there's trust. That's what you're trying to gain from a young actor, and I keep my fingers crossed that he can make that transition from child actor to adult, because it's a difficult river to traverse.
Yeah, indeed. And also, like you say, his name is quite good on a poster, isn't it? In
Yeah,
28
I mean, come on. I mean, he's got superhero written all over him.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. With a film like this, have you been able to absorb what kind of the extended families have taken from the film? Have they been able to see it? Have you had any kind of feedback from them? Because I can imagine I remember watching One Life last year, Anthony Hopkins, how the families were saying it, watching the film, but also it brings back memories. It's kind of a double-edged sword, if you like, kind of watching these kind of films.
I mean, it's early days. I know that Max has seen it a number of times and really likes it. And I think Rebecca said, as long as he likes the film, I don't care if anybody else does. In terms of the extended family, I don't think they will have seen it yet, because it hasn't really had that many screenings. One of the things that Rebecca was talking about actually was, were this film to be shown in the region, there's a possibility that some grandchildren of Jasko would come forward and say that was my grandfather, because Jasko's never been found. He's the one character that they could never trace. So I don't know. I think we live in hope of those things, but yeah, fingers crossed for some kind of wider release.
How I wanted to ask you about accents. How do you struggle with accents?
Look, I like dialect as a study. I use it a lot when I'm doing audiobooks. I'm all over the place. I'm sort of hesitant when I see it on film, because you can drill down and get this amazing dialect going, and then when you watch it, you just see an actor doing a dialect, and it doesn't feel like bedded in speech. And also, why would these Polish people be speaking to each other in English? You know, they'd be speaking in Ukrainian or Polish. But you have to take a bit of artistic license. We had a great dialect coach. And one of the little bells that rang for me was when I walked on set and did the first day of shooting, our DOP Adam, who was actually Polish, he came over and he was like, yeah, sounds pretty good. And that, for me, I just thought, okay, I can relax now. He believes me, so that's enough.
Before you go, I know my mum particularly will get mad at me if I didn't take the opportunity to talk about Red Eye, because it's her favorite thing at the moment. She keeps telling me to watch it. She's all like, "You have to watch it. You have to watch it." I've started watching it. It's great. Blah blah blah. It's right up
Brilliant.
the street. Why aren't you watching it? And I know episode 6, I think, airs. It's I think you can watch it on streaming, but in terms of like ITV, it's
And I
on
think it's the
this
final
Friday, this Sunday, yeah, which lots of people are talking about and everything else. Have you been able to kind of absorb the success of that? Because it's one of those shows that, because of the nature of TV now, people discover at different times. You know, they don't necessarily tune in on the Sunday night. They've obviously got streaming and everything else, but it seems to have struck a chord. And at least from my mum's point of view, she thinks it's absolutely
Well,
fantastic.
if
But
your mum likes it, then we're a hit.
yeah, yeah, it's on my watch list. It's the next thing to watch.
It's interesting because you're right. People are watching terrestrial television, a certain generation, like your mum. Most of us will be probably watching it on streaming because we're angry. I don't want to have to wait for my show. I want to watch it all now. I think figuring out what the numbers are, that's ITV's business, but from their perspective, it's been a big hit for them. I think they're topping 7 million viewers collectively, which is unheard of really these days. At the pinnacle of its success, Spooks was getting 6.4. So I think they're really pleased. I mean, I loved that show so much. I loved the script. I loved the implausibility of 7 or 8 people dying on an airplane, but thinking, what if that actually happened? You know, how do you, what would you do? But also the sort of political bedrock that it sits on, with the brilliant Leslie Sharp playing the head of MI5. I really enjoyed it, and fingers crossed that they'll do a season 2.
Yeah. What was it about that character that spoke to you? Because it's a little bit different for you.
Well, one of the comments is that that it's 6 weeks later and they're still on an aeroplane to Beijing, and it's like, no, actually it takes place over sort of 8 hours, and because they have to turn around mid-flight and come back. I love the idea of playing a doctor, somebody that is by default trustworthy because they've signed the Hippocratic Oath effectively, and he's accused of doing something appalling and defending his honor, the fact that he's innocent. But then during the course of this story, we really start to doubt, is he telling the truth? Who is this guy? Is he a spy? Is he a mule? It becomes much more ambiguous, and it reminded me a bit of those shows that I loved, like Spooks. I miss Spooks, but I was also obsessed with the Bourne trilogy. So it's got little elements of both. It's got a lot of action and it's got a lot of twists and turns, but at the center of it are 2 characters that are going to, reveal themselves.
Yeah, you see, I used to watch 24, and after watching a couple of seasons of that, you're just like, don't trust anybody but Kiefer Sutherland. He's the only person to trust. Not even his daughter. You can't trust anybody. Richard, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the film. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Scott.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys.
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys.
Hey!